Please, can we be on our feet as we welcome our VIPs to the dais? Thank you. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you very much. Please take your seats. Welcome to the very beautiful, majestic main hall of the Accra International Conference Center for a very important event today, celebrating the 22nd International African Writers' Day. So this is an international conference to go with it, 22nd one. My name is Kafui Day. It's my pleasure to be your master of ceremonies for this event. And I'll go straight to business by inviting the Public Relations Advisor, the Pan-African Writers Association, and Chairman of the Conference Planning Committee to deliver the opening salutations. Please put your hands together for Mr. J.E. Alote Papo.
Your Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Planning Committee for this conference, I have the honor to welcome you all very warmly to the 22nd International African Writers Conference. As you know, this conference is being organized by PAWA in commemoration of its annual African Writers Day. And therefore, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for the opening ceremony, I will hand over immediately to the Master of Ceremonies. Thank you very much.
They say nobody ever complained because an address was too short. So thank you very much, Mr. Alote Papo. We have our interpreting services available, so they are headsets. If you require to hear it in a different language, the headsets will be given to you. Channel 1 is for English, and Channel 2 is for French. Before I go to the remarks by the Secretary General of PAWA, I'd like to just introduce the members of the high table. We have, at the very end, Dr. Ike Achebe. He's representative of the Achebe family. And next to Dr. Achebe, we have Professor Remi Raji. He's the president of the Association of Nigerian Authors. Prof, welcome. And next to Professor Raji is His Excellency Ambassador Henry Lopez. He's Ambassador of the Republic of Congo to France and also an author. Seated next to His Excellency is Honorable Elvis Afriye Ankra. He's a Minister of State at the Presidency and he's representing the President of Ghana. I shall jump over the gentleman sitting to his right for strategic reasons and go straight to Mr. K. Jan Apenting. He's the president of the Ghana Association of Writers. And last but definitely not the least, we are pleased to have His Excellency, the Acting High Commissioner of the Republic of Nigeria to Ghana, and he is in the person of Mr. Abraham T. Poku. And now I can go to the gentleman in the blue robes. He is the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association. Please put your hands together for Professor Atukwe Okai, who will deliver the opening remarks at today's event.
Your Excellencies, Honorable Mr. Elvis Afriye Ankra, representing His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, Mr. John Dramani Mahama, fellow writers, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you most warmly to this international conference devoted to the life and works of Chinua Achebe. In 1991, at an OAU conference of Ministers of Education and Culture, it was resolved to establish the birthday of PAWA, 7th November, as the International African Writers' Day, to be celebrated throughout the continent to allow our people a moment of pause within which to reflect on the contribution of the writers of Africa to the development of our continent. This 22nd edition of the International African Writers' Day is dedicated to Chinua Achebe. And on this occasion, PAWA, with reverence and eternal gratitude, remembers the pivotal role played by the late Justice D.F. Annan, former Speaker of the Parliament of Ghana, and His Excellency Dr. Salim Ahmed Saleh, former Secretary of the OAU. They it was who midwifed the birth of PAWA in 1989. Dr. Salim sends his warmest congratulations to the conference. Currently the chairman of the Mwalimu Nyerere Foundation, he is on another international mission. It is a source of great joy that we have here today a whole galaxy of writers and scholars to offer their reflections on the life and work of the grand old man of African literature, Chinua Achebe. In fact, besides our keynote speaker, Ambassador Henry Lopez of Congo-Brazzaville, among all the papers to be presented at this conference, we are to be blessed with the special keynote presentations by dignitaries such as Dr. Margaret Busby and Mr. James Curry, both from the United Kingdom and who have very close professional and personal relationships with Chinua Achebe. We also have Professor Tanela Boni, a novelist and philosopher from La Côte d'Ivoire, as well as Ms. Sylvie Nsami Ngoma, a novelist, publisher, and president of Gabon Writers Association. About an hour ago, I got a call from Libreville that she had boarded the plane, so she must be on the way coming. We have writers from Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Kenya, USA, and Mali. We also recognize some special delegations from Nigeria, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea, and Colombia. The Nigerian delegation of the Association of Nigerian Authors, ANA, is led by Professor Remi Raji. And Remi Raji, where are you? Remi Raji, yes, there he is. Alhaji Abdullahi Denje Yahaya, the Vice President, where are you? You're welcome. The National Financial Secretary, Madam Obi Obasi, as well as the Honorable Dr. Wale Okedira, a former President of the Association of Nigerian Authors and a former member of the Nigerian Parliament. Where are you, Doc? Where are you? Are you there? Very good. We have a special delegation from Equatorial Guinea. Marta Santos. Where is Marta Santos? You are very welcome. And Pombal Maria. And from Angola, we have Gema Mangwe Nguema Nzan. Celso Celestino Moreye Mangwe. and Antoline Ella Asama. We also have from Colombia, through the very supportive efforts of the Colombian ambassador in Ghana, we have the writer Carlos Granes Maya. Our gratitude goes to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of Ghana, for his contribution to this conference. We are touched to have with us Dr. Ike Achebe, the handsome elder son of Chinua Achebe, representing the Achebe family. Professor Mrs. Achebe, who would have wanted to be here with us, sends her warmest greetings. Professor Emeritus Michael Ekweme Farewell of Jamaica and the USA, who was to have presented the keynote address, sends his deepest apologies for not making it to this meeting due to travel complications. He sends his warmest brotherly wishes for a successful conference on a man he knew very well and loved so much. We are exceedingly grateful to His Excellency Ambassador Henry Lopez, who has graciously agreed to deliver the keynote address. Let us show our love. Nous sommes very grateful. We have on several platforms promoted the idea of a formulation for national consciousness development. The formula which has been most profitable and successfully adopted and practiced in other countries, such as Norway, is that in a given country, every year, the Education Ministry undertakes to agree with all publishers that 2,000 copies of every worthy book published, upon selection by an intellectual standard board, be bought and distributed to the libraries throughout the country. Through the continuous encouragement of the publication of works created by African writers, by the acquisition of certain books approved by a quality evaluation board, such a policy will inure to the benefit of all the critical sectors in the chain of the African book industry. It will help to fill our libraries with books. Our writers will be empowered to be able to buy time from running after other forms of livelihood pursuits and devote their time and energies to the creation of more books for our people. Thus, the enlightenment level of our society will be enhanced and our indigenous publishing industries will be supported and developed. In conclusion, let me say how glad and proud I am to announce that the Pan-African Writers Association has received a warm message from one of the most distinguished living African writers for this conference. Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who for very good reasons could not be with us today, says, Brother Atukwe, please do convey my solidarity with the conference and its tribute to the work of the great son of Africa, Chinua Achebe. Ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome to this conference on Chinua Achebe, Africa's own literary and intellectual asset. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Atukwe Okai, Secretary General for the Pan-African Writers Association. Remember, the theme for this event is celebrating the life and works of Chinua Achebe, the coming of age of African literature. And it's on this note that I invite to speak representatives of the Achebe family, indeed the first of the children of Professor Chinua Achebe. Please put your hands together for Dr. Ike Achebe. Let's keep the applause coming till he comes here. Take over from you.
Your Excellency, John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, ably represented today, honorable ministers and honorable members of the government of Ghana, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association, Professor Atukwe Okai, members of the Executive Committee of the Pan-African Writers Association, distinguished writers, scholars, and representatives from the 52 national writers associations in Africa and the African diaspora present here today, distinguished writers and scholars from all over the world who have joined us, ladies and gentlemen, it is a special honor for me to stand before you this morning on the occasion of the 22nd International African Writers' Day, an occasion which you, the members of the Pan-African Writers Association, have set aside to celebrate the life and works of my father, Chinua Achebe. My name is Ike Chukwu Achebe. I bring you warm and hearty greetings from my mother, the entire family of Christy and Chinua Achebe, and from Nigeria. I salute the good people of Ghana for your long history of substantive, consistent leadership of Africa on issues of the intellectual and economic development of the African person all over the world. I would like to recognize the presence here among us of one of my father's oldest and dearest friends, his age mate and classmate, Eze Ndi Keliong, Professor Chukwuemeka Ike. Sir, thank you for being here. I have also seen James Curry. James, thank you for being here. And so many other friends of my father's. This is just the sort of occasion my father enjoyed, being among his fellow writers, creative artists, scholars. The acronym of the Pan-African Writers Association, PAWA, which if you're West African, particularly Nigerian, has all sorts of connotations, is also a fortunate acronym in this particular case, in putting us in mind of, in reminding us of Chinua Achebe's engagement with the dynamics of power and its relationship to literature. It calls us to reflect on that most abiding of Achebe's missions as a writer, to restore the dignity of the African person and of all powerless persons everywhere, by restoring, as he called it, a balance of stories. And this is what he has said and written, and I quote, "Let me say that I do think decency and civilization would insist that the writer takes sides with the powerless. Clearly, there is no moral obligation to write in any particular way. But there is a moral obligation, I think, not to ally oneself with power against the powerless. I think an artist, in my definition of that word, would not be someone who takes sides with the emperor against his powerless subjects." And then, of course, there is that terrible, some say comic story of the drunken soldiers who came to Broadcasting House in Lagos looking for my father to test this power. You see, my father had received a telephone call one Sunday morning following the military coup in Nigeria in 1966 and the publication of his novel, A Man of the People, informing him that these soldiers said they came to test which was more powerful, his pen or their gun. That novel, incidentally, is one of two adapted for the stage by Professor Femi Oshofiso, showing at this conference. But of course, power is serious business. And writers' associations the world over, but especially in Africa, play a much needed role in providing protection to the powerless and freedom of expression. Protections that Chinua Achebe held to be very dear to the development of society. That is why it is most gratifying for me to be among you. With so many Achebe scholars gathered here, all of you much more qualified than I to speak on Achebe's life and work. I look forward to spending the next days listening and learning from you on the various ways in which these ideals and the ideals around the emergence of modern African literature impinge on the Achebean mission. We, the Achebe family, thank all of you, the writers of the National Writers Associations of Africa and the African diaspora, for this great honor you have done Chinua Achebe. I thank Professor Atukwe Okai and PAWA for inviting me. I thank you all for listening to me, and I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ike Achebe. Now I know how to pronounce the last name well, because I've heard it from the one who owns the name. Thank you. We are now ready for our keynote address. It will be delivered by the Ambassador of the Republic of Congo to France, who is in Ghana, also as an author. Put your hands together for Ambassador Henri Lopez. I am reliably informed that he'll deliver his address in French, but never fear if you speak English. Mr. Stephen Agu will conduct the interpretation, and you get the full meaning of his speech. Thank you.
Honorable Elvis Safier Accra, representing the head of state, President John Dramani Mahama, Professor Atukwe Okai, our so brilliant and dynamic Secretary General, ambassadors, excellencies, colleague writers, ladies and gentlemen, young people, the new generation. First of all, let me apologize. I would like to speak fully and thoroughly in English, but my English is very bad. I consider and I think that it's not a mistake to tell it that there is two new big African languages in the continent, English and French. I'll speak in one of them, but I'll ask also the indulgence of the interpreter, because for the benefit of all, I think even if my English is not an academic one, an English from Oxford, it will be better to try to speak the most possible in English. My presentation is entitled No Longer at Ease, an Igbo text or a word novel. As you know, Chinua Achebe has left works of more than 15 novels. The most known all over the world is Things Fall Apart. Myself, I belong to a country which is Francophone. In spite of that, the Congo-Brazzaville, in spite of that, from many years, this novel, Things Fall Apart, is in the curriculum of secondary school and many universities. No longer at ease that I've chosen to speak about is less known, but it's my favorite one. I'm not a Chinua Achebe specialist, neither a literary critic, neither an academic. I'm only a small writer who is fond and who loves Chinua Achebe works, one of the biggest creators, of which the works constitute one of my sources of inspiration. A writer I mean an artisan, how do you say it? A workcraft. Somebody who is very concerned by what the masters has done and who are permanently in dialogue with the masters. It is in that dialogue that a writer learns his profession, that he improves his talent, and that he improves himself. A number of the authors of our continents denies today to be called African writers. They want to be considered only as writers, no more. Not because they think that it's a curse to be an African, but they don't want to be kept in a ghetto, and they want to play in the first league. They consider that they belong to the world literature. To quote Edouard Glissant, a league where there is no national flag. Chinua Achebe was undoubtedly a writer whose impact was universal. But he was also, and basically, a creator belonging to the African pantheon, and which works constitute a precious part of our heritage. A work written without any doubt to sort out Africa from the underground where we were kept by colonialism, and to present to the world a culture, civilization, people who have been forgotten. But novels also written for African readers, to offer them books in which they recognize their own environment, their climate, their ancestral customs, and characters which resemble them. To me, No Longer At Ease illustrates this dialectic between what I call original identity and international identity. The work put from the outset the reader in Africa with characters who are Africans, more precisely Nigerian, better Igbo characters coming from the village Umuofia. The story, the plot, take place in the years which were just preceding the independence. In certain moment in the plot, the author precise even that it take place in the 50s. Obi Okonkoko the grandson of the main character of Things Fall Apart, come back from UK, where he has accomplished his higher education thanks to a scholarship financed by the community of the village. This practice is not common in all Africa, but all Africa understand very well this solidarity which exists, for example, in Francophone country, we call it tontine. And this is the equivalent in our country. As je vais continuer en français. Comme il fallait s'y attendre, à son retour, Obi considère son pays natal avec un regard différent de celui qu'il portait sur le pays avant son départ et depuis son exil. On ne se baigne jamais deux fois dans le même fleuve. Obi au Congo n'est plus l'adolescent chaste et candide, angoissé de laisser sa famille pour se rendre dans le pays mystérieux d'outre-mer. Il juge sévèrement les Britanniques du Nigeria, des dernières années de la colonie, mais il pose également un regard critique sur ses compatriotes, sur sa propre famille, sur leurs mœurs, sur leurs croyances, sur leurs préjugés. Il déambule dans les rues de Lagos, en étrange pays dans son pays lui-même, pour reprendre la formule du poète Louis Aragon. We have lost the interpreter.
You're supposed to be doing it.
So, it's my fault.
Mr. Agbo, are you here with us?
He is not there. So, I'll tell it in English. I say that in a few words, that when Obi came back from UK in his country, he is very critical vis-à-vis the British colonialist people who are in the country, but he has also a critical eyes on his compatriot, his family, the way they live, their beliefs, and their bias. So he is in his country like a stranger in his own country. Two other ingredients are in the novel: love and the necessity to assume a social behavior, showing his wealth. So after that, Obi will imperceptibly, but in an irremediable way, be led in a, will go to fall. When I say that No Longer Artist is an Igbo novel, I don't mean, of course, that it is written in Igbo language, but during at different moments, the author indicates that the characters speak in Igbo. Sometimes partly, sometimes completely. I quote, "The speech, which had started off 100% in Igbo, was now 50-50. But his audience still seemed highly impressed. They liked good Igbo, but they also admired English." Obi has suffered while he was in UK of the lack of his Igbo identity. It is the essence of his nostalgia. I quote, "4 years in England had filled Obi with a longing to be back in Umofia. This feeling was sometimes so strong that he found himself feeling ashamed of studying English for his degree. He spoke Igbo whenever he had the least opportunity of doing so. Nothing gave him greater pleasure than to find another Igbo-speaking student in a London bus. But when he had to speak in English with a Nigerian student from another tribe, he lowered his voice. I'm sorry. It was humiliating to have to speak to one's countryman in a foreign language, especially in the presence of the proud owners of that language. They would naturally assume that one had no language of one's own. He wished they were here today to see. Let them come to Umofia now and listen to the talk of men who made a great art of conversation. Let them come and see men and women and children who knew how to live, whose joy of life had not yet been killed by those who claim to teach to other nations how to live." Interpreter, please. Okay. L'identité Igbo imprègne le récit par la profusion de proverbes qui émaillent le récit. Par moments, enfin, l'auteur glisse dans le texte des mots Igbo, voire des chants dans cette langue. Il va même jusqu'à utiliser plusieurs fois dans le texte le terme « osu » sans en donner le sens que l'on finit par comprendre en raison du contexte.
The Igbo identity can be seen along what he says as his works, especially the proverbs that he uses along his writing. At some places, naturally, the author puts Igbo words, sometimes some songs in that Igbo language. He goes to the extent of using many times in this context the word osu, a term that he fails to give the meaning until you end by understanding, because of the context, what that means.
On peut aussi noter au passage que le patronyme du personnage central du roman, Obi, n'est au bout du compte rien d'autre que l'anagramme du terme Igbo. J'ai par ailleurs tendance à penser que Chinua Achebe a voulu lui-même insister sur l'essence Igbo de son roman en nommant son personnage principal Obi, un patronyme formé de 3 lettres qui composent le terme Igbo.
We can also note that he has a heritage, that he names the main character Obi, which is at the end of the day another term for Igbo that he has turned upside down. We go to the extent of knowing that Chinua Achebe wanted himself to insist on the word and the meaning of Igbo in his works by naming the personal character Obi, which is in fact the 3 letters that form the word Igbo.
Toutes ces annotations, toutes ces références à l'univers Igbo ne sont cependant pas de nature à rendre le récit hermétique au lecteur non Igbo. Au contraire, le lecteur africain n'a aucun mal à s'y retrouver et à adapter la situation à celle de son propre pays. C'est en ce sens que le roman dépasse les frontières du pays africain pour devenir un roman du monde, je veux dire un roman facilement transportable, aussi bien ailleurs dans notre continent que dans n'importe quel pays du monde.
All these connotations, all these references that he puts in his novel and which relate the term Igbo are not, however, any hermetical closures to the understanding of the novel to non-Igbo speakers. He has, nonetheless, put in his book something that every reader of the book finds himself and adapts the situation to that of his country of origin. It is in this regard that the novel goes beyond the barriers of the African continent to become a novel of the world. And I want to say a novel that every continent can read and find something valuable in.
Quotation. The next item on the agenda was a motion of censure on the President and the Executive for mishandling Obi's reception. Their complaint was that they were not given any of the 24 bottles of beer which have been bought. The top people and elders had monopolized it, leaving the young people with 2 kegs of sour palm wine. As everybody knew, Lagos palm wine, atoll, but water, and infinite dilution. Qui d'entre nous n'a pas vécu ces atmosphères de réjouissance à l'occasion du retour près des siens les plus humbles? Avoir l'impression d'être l'enfant prodigue de la Bible, une manière d'Ulysse, bien plus un héros.
Who among us has never witnessed such joyful occasions when he comes back to his own people who are lower than he is, in quotation? To be the prodigal son in the Bible, or a man of Ulysses in the words that we read from the Greek mythology, or in other terms, a hero of his own making.
The white man's country must be very distant indeed, suggested one of the men. Every knew it was very distant, but they wanted to hear it again from the mouth of their young kinsman. It is something that can be told, said Obi. It took the white man's ship 16 days, 4 market weeks to do the journey. Think of that, said one of the men to the other. 4 market weeks, and not in a canoe, but a white man's ship that runs on the wet water as a snake runs on grass. Sometimes, for a whole market week, there is no land to be seen, said Obi. No land in front, beyond, to the right, and to the left, only water. Think of that, said one of the men to the others. No land for 1 whole market week. In our folk stories, a man gets to the land of spirits when he has passed 7 rivers, 7 forests, and 7 hills. Without doubt, you have visited the land of spirits. To be not to exaggerate and to waste your time, I will try to be concise and say that I developed a part where I tried to show how No Longer At Ease is a novel not only African but also available for a Japanese, for a Chinese, for an American, for a European. And at the end, I tried to prove that Chinua Achebe is more than a sociologist. He does not describe Africa, but he do it with talent, and it is why he is more than an African writer. There is the ingredient of the tragedy, the passion of love of the two people. This novel, which plot we have seen it, is taking place in African earth and in a very specific society. It possesses a universal dimension. This is thanks to the technique of the storyteller and the magic of the writing. First, he deals of the subject in a modern way. La tradition orale africaine et le roman classique moderne nous ont habitués au récit linéaire, qui, à bien y regarder, n'est pas la réalité, mais une reconstruction de la réalité. En effet, quand quelqu'un se présente à nous, il ne commence pas par nous raconter sa vie dans l'ordre chronologique. Ce serait fastidieux. Même ce que nous savons de nos proches est le résultat de fragments reçus dans leur désordre. Ainsi, de No Longer At Ease. Le récit est une longue parenthèse encadrée par 2 scènes du tribunal. C'est un long flashback, lui-même fragmenté par des séquences qui s'emboîtent les unes des autres, selon une logique psychologique interne au récit. Picasso aurait déclaré un jour qu'une création artistique n'est pas tenue d'obéir à une logique cartésienne. C'est la logique interne de l'œuvre que le créateur doit respecter.
Well, who among us will tell of his life's history and begin by I was born so and end I died so? He will mix it for us. So we want to know that Chinua Achebe is a narrator who tells us his life, and he tells it in an artistic form so that we understand what he says. That is the logic why we say that he has crossed the barriers of Africa to be an international writer. Picasso will tell you that in the French word, Cartesianism means that you start in a chronological way, but that is not the work of an author of Chinua Achebe's caliber.
Ce va-et-vient dans le temps fonctionne parfaitement dans No Longer At Ease. Le lecteur n'est jamais désorienté, ne s'égare jamais, il est emporté par le rythme cinématographique du récit. Mais de quel cinéma? Songeons que le roman paraît en 1960, le récit cinématographique d'alors est généralement compté de manière lente. Or, Chinua Achebe traite son récit au rythme des séquences des films américains les plus modernes. Un enchaînement de spots. Je n'en voudrais qu'un seul exemple parmi de nombreux autres.
We want to summarize by saying that Chinua Achebe writes in 1960 That is why he wrote his book, No Longer At Ease for Us. But he's using modern trend in American cinematography to describe the sins that we have. I think you understand and you follow him that way.
La scène de rupture qui suit est représentative de ce procédé.
What I will cite as an example is what will follow. Follow it nicely because I've written in English and you see what it means.
It's very rude to be reading when you have a visitor. You should have known I was very badly brought up. Any reflection on her family was a very risky subject and often ended in tears. Even now, her eyes were beginning to look glazed. Clara, he said, putting his arm around her. She was all tensed up. Clara, she did not answer. She was turning the pages of the magazine mechanically. I don't understand why you want to quarrel. Not a sound. I think I had better be going. I think so too. Clara, I'm very sorry. About what? Leave me, Ojari. She pushed his arm off. Obi sat for another couple of minutes, gazing at the floor. All right. He sprang to his feet. Clara remained where she was, turning the pages. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Then 3 lines, 3 blank lines. When he got back to the flat, he told Sebastian not to cook any supper. On effectue un saut dans le temps et l'espace sans indiquer ce qui s'est passé dans l'intervalle. Si ce vide était rempli, il alourdirait le récit. Toute l'écriture du roman est dans le même style. Peu d'épithètes, peu d'adjectifs. La phrase est légère, totalement dégraissée. Il y a bien des scènes de description de paysages ou d'atmosphère. Elles aussi sont traitées avec concision. No Longer At Ease est un roman court, moins de 200 pages. Mais un roman dense, fort, puissant, un roman poignant. Quand on le commence, on ne peut plus s'en détacher, on perd le sommeil. Sa fin est brutale.
We jump into time and space in this book. All this is written with this intention. No descriptive adjectives that we call in French epithets. It's a short novel, less than 200 pages, but it is strong, piercing to the heart. That is what we have as a book we call No Longer At Ease.
Écoutez, the money lay on the table. You would have preferred not to look in its direction. But he seems to have no choice. He just sat looking at it, paralyzed by the thoughts. There was a knock at the door. He sprang to his feet, grabbed the money, and ran towards his bedroom. A second knock caught him almost at the door of the bedroom. 2 people entered. One was his recent visitor, the other, a complete stranger. Are you Mr. Nkoko? Asked the stranger. Obi said yes, in a voice he could hardly recognize. The room began to swim round and round. The stranger was saying something, but it sounded distant, as things sound to a man in a fever. He then searched Obi and found the marked notes. He began to say some more things, invoking the name of the Queen, like a district officer in the bush. While the other man used the telephone outside of his door to summon a police van. On posait un jour à Claude Simon, prix Nobel de littérature 1985, la question « Quel conseil donneriez-vous à un jeune écrivain ?» Réponse « Faites 100 pas dans la rue, puis écrivez ce que vous avez ressenti. » Je dis bien ressenti et non pas vu et observé. Chinois Achebe n'a vraisemblablement jamais ni lu ni rencontré Claude Simon, mais c'est bien la méthode qu'il applique ici. Aucune description des acteurs de la scène, mais la tension qui sous-tend la scène est exprimée de manière magistrale, avec une économie de moyens. On comprend soi-même le non-dit. L'important, c'est ce qui se passe alors dans la tête, dans la poitrine, dans le cœur et dans les reins. Toby Nkoko.
The sentences are very short. The subject, the verb, and the complements. In the sentences, you have a judgment. There's no rhetorical sentence like in L'étranger of Camus, the outsider. One day they asked this question to Claude Simon, a Nobel Prize holder of literature in 1985. The question was, what advice would you give to a young writer? He answered this way: walk 100 paces in the road and then write about what you felt. I said felt, not what you have seen nor observed. Chinua Achebe maybe has never met the person we call Claude Simon, but that is the method that he uses in his novel. There's no description of the actors, but the tension is there. The unwritten word tells you that he's economizing his means of writing. You understand yourself what is not said or what is not written. The most important thing here is what goes on in your head, in your chest, and in your hand, and in your waist, just like Obi Okonkwo.
Ultimately, what is the meaning of this story? I quote, "Everybody wondered why." It is the last sentences of the novel. The learned judge, as we have seen, could not comprehend how an educated young man, and so on and so forth. The British councilman, even the men of Mofa, did not know. And we must presume that in spite of this certitude, Mr. Green did not know either. Unquote. The novelist's role is not to give answers. It's not either to propose solutions. The novelist put questions. Questions that we have not yet put to ourselves, but questions which concern us, and the novelist gives us only some elements to respond. It's our task to discover. It's our task to think about it. The good novel don't give answers, don't give certitudes. It invites us to stop and to reflect. In my presentation was entitled "No Longer at Ease." Is it an Igbo text or a word novel? Of course, both. Very soon, Chinua Achebe understood that our role, I mean writer's role, is double. In one hand, to defend, to illustrate, to promote our cultures, our civilization, that which was denied by colonialism. Let's remember that the colonization was undertook because we were considered as people without history, without civilization, without culture, and that there was a white man burden to educate us, to sort us out of the barbary. In that context, the novelist has the task to revitalize, to promote our culture. As Senghor invited us, we have to do like the Mami Wata, to go against the stream. But Chinua Achebe also has understood fully that Africa cannot be closed in itself, and that Africa has to make its own autocritics, no longer at ease répond à cette exigence.
No longer at ease answers the question that I have just posed. This problem.
Une dernière question que posent tous les lecteurs chaque fois qu'ils rencontrent un auteur est de savoir la part d'autobiographie que l'ouvrage renferme. Qui est Obi Okonkwo? Ou plutôt, Obi Okonkwo serait-il Chinua Achebe? Évidemment pas. Mais je gage que chaque fois qu'on lui a posé la question, Chinua Achebe a dû sourire et, à l'instar de Gustave Flaubert, qui proclamait que Madame Bovary, c'était lui, il a dû malicieusement répondre « Bien sûr, Obi Okonkwo, c'est moi », alors que d'évidence, le roman n'est pas autobiographique. Même si son auteur ne s'est pas interdit d'utiliser des morceaux de sa propre expérience. En fait, Obi Okonkwo, c'est moi. Moi, le lecteur. C'est moi, c'est vous. Chacun des lecteurs est chacun des personnages du roman. En même temps, chaque lecteur est différent de chaque personnage et peut-être le contraire de chacun d'eux. Nous vivons chaque jour, vous et moi, dans le monde de nos longueurs acquises. C'est après la lecture du roman que nous en prenons conscience. Le grand romancier est, à mon sens, celui qui nous fait croire que l'histoire inventée est une histoire réelle. Merci, Chinua Achebe, de nous avoir sortis des ténèbres de cette nuit dans laquelle nous avançons en tâtonnant. Merci d'avoir, avec ce no longer at ease, auquel je crois de toutes mes forces, merci d'avoir illuminé notre nuit intérieure grâce aux fulgurances de votre génie. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Let me finish for those who don't speak French. There's a last question that every reader of No Longer At Ease asks, and that they ask usually the writer, to know whether the book is your autobiography or not. Who is Obi Okonkwo? Or perhaps, is Obi Okonkwo Chinua Achebe himself? He is not. But I note that once you ask that question to Chinua Achebe, he will smile, just like Gustave Flaubert in Madame Bovary who said, the book is me, he would answer gracefully and with a malicious smile. Yes, Obi Okonkwo is me. Whilst truly the novel is not an autobiography, even if the author is not forbidden to use parts of his life experience. So, Obi Okonkwo is you, it is me, it's everybody who reads No Longer at Ease. It is everybody, it's all of us. Sometimes we find ourselves in the characters in the book. Sometimes we are completely different from the characters. That is a book. But all of us live every day, you and I, the world of No Longer at Ease. It is after reading No Longer at Ease that we are aware of the circumstances. The great writer is the one who makes us believe that what he has invented as a novel is a real story. We thank you, Chinua Achebe, to have brought us out of the darkness of the night that we were put in and in which we were walking, feeling our groping our way. Thank you to have written No Longer at Least for us, in which I believe that it will bring light to our dark night. Thank you for your genius thought. Thank you, Chinua Achebe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stephen Agbo, who interpreted the address of Ambassador Henry Lopez, who is Ambassador of the Republic of Congo to France. Ambassador, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. And before we get to our formal opening address by the President's representative, I'd love to enjoy some great xylophone music from the Upper West region of Ghana. It's performed by Abibi Groma, who are from the School of Performing Arts at the University of Ghana. The kind of music they play is called talking xylophone music. It welcomes people, it gives signs of the seasons, and it goes with important social events in that part of Ghana. So please put your hands together for Abibi Groma, talking xylophone music.
Whether you are many or you are few, that you have created an impact. The xylophone invites you.
you very much. Thank you, Roma. Thank you. And on those melodious tones, we shall now welcome the Honorable Minister of State at the Presidency, Mr. Elvis Ifeye Ankara. He is presenting the Head of State, John Dramani Mahama.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ministers of State and Members of Parliament, my job is simple. I'm to represent the President, who would have loved to be here. He's a member of the Ghana Writers Association in good standing. But as you know, we are in a season where many things are happening at the same time. And so, even though he's not here physically, he's here with us in spirit. Let me take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Achebe, Professor Raja, Ambassador Henry Lopez, who happened to have graciously hosted me in Congo, Brazzaville. And I was very surprised to see him. It's indeed a very small world. Professor Atukwe Okain. Anytime I see Professor Okain, the first thing that comes into mind is logoligi logarithms. Mr. K. Jana Painting, who has promised that he's going to make me a writer by force, whether I like it or not. The acting Nigerian High Commissioner to Ghana, His Excellency Mr. Asosona. I also recognize the presence of people that I describe as icons in our society. They have served this country very well, so wherever we meet them, we need to acknowledge them and give them the due honor. I recognize the presence of Mr. K.B. Asante. I recognize the presence of Honorable Yao Osafo-Mafo, former Finance Minister. I recognize the presence of Madame Joyce Ayi. I recognize the presence of Professor V.C. R.A.C. Crab. And of course, I recognize the presence of my own sister, Jifa Gomeshi. And Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Secretary General and members of the Governing Council of the Pan-African Writers Association, eminent writers, patrons and lovers of the arts, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and of course, our students. May I, on behalf of the government and people of Ghana, officially welcome, first of all, our brothers and sisters from Africa and the diaspora to our warm and hospitable homeland, Ghana. And to our serene city of Accra. As you know, not only is our country on the Greenwich Meridian, we are also located in the center of the earth. Thus, having come this far, please feel free to enjoy all that our city has to offer during your few days stay. Now, to all of you here present, I bid you a warm welcome to this opening ceremony of the 22nd African Writers Conference in commemoration of this year's African Writers Day, which falls tomorrow, the 7th of November. May I hasten now to express my gratitude to your association for the honor done me by your invitation to me to open this conference. Today, I find myself here on one of those occasions when I appear in two capacities. First, as the servant of our dear nation, and therefore your chief host, to perform the official opening ceremony of your conference, a responsibility I gladly accept as one of my sacred trusts. And second, as a colleague, a fellow writer, a very young one, in fact, a latter-day aspiring to writing sainthood, who for fortuitous circumstances have contrived to offer an opportunity to pontificate, as it were, to my sirs. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I consider this second capacity in which I appear before you a most humbling, memorable, and special personal honor, and I am eternally grateful. On the occasion of our 22nd African Writers' Day, I wish on my own behalf and on behalf of my government and people to congratulate through PAWA all African writers and writers associations for keeping faith with our stakeholders over the years by letting us pause and reflect on the world of writers and writing on African Writers' Day, a day celebrated at an eminent meeting of African Ministers of Education and Culture in Cotonou, Benin in 1991. Our societies must encourage and support our writers by reading works written by our own people, improving on our reading habits, and thereby be absorbed in the themes our writers project for our development as a people. Congratulations to PAWA for that. At this juncture, with your kind permission, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish to turn to the theme of this year's conference, celebrating the life and works of Chinua Achebe, the coming of age of African literature. The name Chinua Achebe has and must have resonance with many of us, old and young, as one of our preeminent men of letters our continent and world have been blessed with, and whose famous book, Things Fall Apart, served and still serves as a basic reading text in African literature. In my keynote address at the inaugural Chinua Achebe Leadership Forum held at the Orlin Hall of the Bard College in Annandale-on-Hudson, New York, USA, on December 9th, 2013, I paid a personal tribute to this African literary giant by recalling the deep sense of satisfaction I personally derived from reading Things Fall Apart 40 years ago. I related to this work of Achebe as it served as a rite of passage for me and the world around me. For me, having been so captivated by the narrative of Things Fall Apart, I was deeply honored when the late Professor Achebe was sent the manuscript of my first published work titled My First Coup d'Etat and Other True Stories from the Lost Decades of Africa. The grand old man wasn't only most gracious in reading the entire manuscript, he offered very useful comments which went a long way in shaping my final work. My only regret is that much as I look forward to a face-to-face encounter with Professor to sit at his feet and drink from the fountain of his profound knowledge, it was not to be. Sadly, he passed on only a short time before I was to meet him. The loss is entirely mine. His funeral, which I attended, provided me with an opportunity to come close to him. Today, like many of you, I am left with a memory of him through his works. Today, as we celebrate him, a question or two should be asked. When Achebe wrote his first novel, what made a young man like him grapple with a problem so fundamental about the destiny of Africa? What is Achebe's message for the modern African world? I know your conference has lined up great men and women of letters to address these and other issues about Achebe expertly, as has been done by the keynote speaker. However, please allow me to venture to pontificate that, in my opinion, Achebe's works mirror the challenges of societal integrity, cultural sovereignty, and the dilemma of self-awareness and self-confidence in us as a people. Since that time, how far has Africa progressed to come to terms with her past, present, and future? Fellow writers, I wish to venture to suggest that wherever our grand old man has gone, he is even now looking at us and calling to us all in our own small ways to care a little, think a little, and care enough about Africa to dare to try to do something about our continent's destiny. He, in the goodliness of his heart, before God and man, did care enough in his time to think and weep for Africa, to dream and weave narratives of reality in our efforts to confront the deeds bedeviling Africa's security and progress. Therefore, I'm pleased to see here in the audience some students from some identifiable second cycle educational institutions in Accra, observing what is going on. Who can tell what inspiration they may gather through this encounter with Achebe, just as I did some 40 years ago. Achebe may be dead and gone, but his thoughts, his works, his books are eternally with us. And for the right education of our children and the mind revolution which we Africans so much desire to spare our development, our societies must make a conscious effort to seek knowledge for worthwhile living and the development of our societies from the Achebes of this world. Not only should we read books written by our writers for our people, we should see them while they are alive, touch them and feel them, connect with their humanity, from which spring their acute sense of self-awareness, purpose, and the dilemmas of reality which writers are so endowed with. So above all, this conference should also be for the youth. Our writers should regularly be invited into our schools, talk to students, share their works and thoughts with them, and let our youth grow up knowing their writers who so much influence their thoughts knowingly or unknowingly. Honorable ministers and members of parliament, His Excellencies, the members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Secretary General, and the members of the Governing Council of the Pan-African Writers Association, PAWA, eminent writers, patrons, and lovers of the arts, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I now have the singular honor in declaring the 12th International African Writers Conference officially open. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of State at the Presidency, Sir Elvis Afriya Anchor, representing the Head of State, President John Dramani Mahama. So it's open. Thank you. We will now move to the end of the event by inviting the Public Relations Advisor, PAWA, and Chairman of the Conference Planning Committee up on the stage. Please put your hands together for Mr. J.E. Alote Papu.
The Honorable Minister of State, representing His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable Ministers and Parliamentarians, Your Excellencies, fellow writers, patrons, lovers of the arts, and students. I believe you all recognize that a conference of such magnitude would not have been possible without the resources and logistics from many quarters. We wish to thank all of you for the assistance that you have given to PAWA since it commenced activities in connection with planning for this conference. However, in particular, I wish to acknowledge our major sponsors who have helped us in coming thus far. And as I mentioned them, I would like us to acknowledge them by a clap of hands. The PricewaterhouseCoopers Company, African Development Bank, Gold Ghana Company, Nestle Ghana Limited, and Coca-Cola Ghana Limited. We also need to acknowledge our media partners, Daily Graphic, Joy FM, and the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. While we are at it, I need to mention that this conference is on social media. And if you want to follow us, you may do so on Twitter at PAWA_2015. We are also on Facebook. At the same time, we wish to also recognize particularly on account of the message from His Excellency the President in his opening address that we need to get the youth now involved in the activities of writers, that they must come closer to writers and also be inspired. I wish to recognize the participation here this morning of the following secondary schools: Otibuatin Senior High School, Oxford School Medina, Armed Forces SHS, University of Education Winneba, and the Good Shepherd International School. And now to our vote of thanks. First of all, we wish to recognize with deepest appreciation the very good speech that has been delivered on behalf of the President by the Honorable Minister of State. And I'm sure you join me in respectfully requesting the Honorable Minister of State to convey to His Excellency our deepest appreciation, and that we shall continue to chew the cord on his very excellent speech during our conference. And so we thank you, the Honorable Minister. Please convey to His Excellency our appreciation. When Ambassador Lopez was making his address, the keynote, he made mention of the issue of time and space in Chinua Achebe's work, I can only whisper to you that only the organizers of this conference know the issues about time and space that have enabled us to have such a veteran speaker deliver this very poignant message to us this morning. Because Ambassador Lopez did not only prepare his address in French, but he volunteered and did the interpretation as well, part-time, you may say. We are indeed very grateful, Ambassador Lopez. And to our own Dr. A.K. Achebe, please extend to the family our deepest appreciation once again for your statement of support to the Pan-African Writers Conference. We also thank all of you for the precious time that you have spent with us this morning. Of course, we haven't come to the end of the conference yet. We are still in the middle of it. And I wish to mention that when we close from here, all the delegates, after the high table has recessed, would converge by the stairs in the front of the conference for a group picture, after which the buses that are to convey you to the venue for the conference will be waiting for you. I also need to advise all of us that tomorrow at 6 in the evening, there will be another performance at the National Theatre. This time it will be on The Arrow of God, The Wound of Man, Femi's official stage adaptation of Chinua Achebe's Arrow of God. Yesterday we had an exciting time, and tomorrow will be yet another. And of course, the general public is invited and admission is free, so you are all invited to participate in this. Beyond this, let me indicate that other activities for this conference, which are strictly by invitation, must be adhered to by all lovers of the arts. Official delegates and accredited media persons are those who come into those sessions. And with that, I want to thank you once again for your participation this morning. Thank you very much.
The chairman of the conference planning committee has made my work easy. All I have to say is thank you very much for being here. The VVIPs who exit the hall now, followed by the delegates, will take a group photo on the steps of the conference center, after which they will join the buses whose engines have been turned on, waiting to take them to the conference venue. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. My name is Kafui Day. Enjoy your stay in Ghana if you're visiting, and have a beautiful, beautiful experience. Thank you very much. God bless.